Nair Wahid said, "Knowing your power is what creates humility. Not knowing your power is what creates insecurity."
Sophia Amoruso once said, "You don't get taken seriously by asking someone to take you seriously. You've got to show up and own it. If it's a man's world, who cares? I'm still really glad to be a woman in it."
Each of us have the power to make choices, and the choices that make us most successful are
the ones with love in our hearts, others in mind, and that allow us to grow and be truly happy.
The future is woman. When the moment I arrive, I know exactly where I to go, and I don't need you to tell me. The future is woman. They felt the ground shake to its core from the utter of my words. Can you hear me? I doubt that you'll understand the future that I see at hand. Tell me, can you recognize our words? Because I know where I stand. And if you can't handle it, let go of my hand. 'Cause I'll walk it off. That hatred and violence, it's not my fault. I will internalize my bright brown eyes. When the future is woman, I'll be able to express what I'm feeling without content from another one, 'cause of how I was born. When the future is woman, I won't feel fear, shame, or regret for the choices that I have made for my own betterment. I doubt that you'll understand the future that I see at hand. Tell me, can you recognize our worth? Because I know where I stand. And if you can't handle it, let go of my hand. 'Cause I'll walk it off. That hatred and violence, it's not my fault. I will internalize my bright brown eyes. Oh, ba da da da, ba da ba ba. Oh, ba da da da, ba da da da. I am not your muse for you to abuse. I am not your muse for you to abuse. I am not your muse for you to abuse. Is that clear enough for you? The future is woman, because behind him she stands tall. Because me too isn't a crime, it's a battle call.
Welcome to Under SF Inspire. I'm your host, Tina.
And I'm Tyler. First, we want to thank Natalie and the band for such a powerful opening. I really can't believe we're only one episode away from wrapping up the season. The last few weeks have been so much fun, don't you think?
Of course, it's been a lot of hard work, but it's also been a great experience. I'm glad I got to share the season with you, Tyler, and you guys at home as well.
You're so sweet, Tina, but let's just save all the mushy stuff for next episode.
Yeah, you're right. Let's not get emotional just yet.
Today, we'll be taking a close look at La Casa De Las Madres, an organization in San Francisco that focuses on giving domestic violence victims and survivors a safe space.
We'll have the opportunity to speak with an education and volunteer manager from La Casa De Las Madres.
Before we meet the organization, Tina and I wanted to start a conversation on a difficult subject with our peers.
Let's take a look at what our peers have to say about their experiences. We're here to talk to San Francisco State students today.
Yes, we are going to be talking to them about domestic violence and neglect.
We want to hear their own personal thoughts surrounding these kind of controversial topics.
We're going to be holding a conversation in the form of Never Have I Ever.
Let's get started. Never have I ever felt neglected by someone.
A personal relationship I had with parents is them not keeping up with me and feeling like I didn't have that kind of support, or that I couldn't really talk to them about it if I needed to.
Never have I ever experienced bullying.
There was one time at practice when the girls were literally kicking my ankles when I didn't have the ball because they didn't like me for some reason.
Never have I ever bullied someone else.
Ever since the 3rd grade, I started gaining more confidence and slowly turned into a bully.
Never have I ever witnessed domestic violence.
So I'm Armenian, and I feel like the standards are really different, but I've seen my parents do stuff and I'm like, that's not cool, but it's just different. They're from a different country, different years. Yeah.
Never have I ever felt unsafe.
There are many times when I have been followed and been very scared, almost to a point, or was to a point of running away, and it's frightening to think about.
Never have I ever been bullied.
This may be surprising to some people, but when I was younger, I was actually bullied a lot. I was bullied for the way that I spoke and the way I acted. For some reason, a lot of the kids felt like I didn't act the way I should have been acting, so they bullied me for it.
I've definitely been there as well. In middle school, I had braces and glasses, so naturally I was an easy target for people to make fun of my appearance. And I felt like we cared so much about what we looked like back then, and we were made fun of it for so much.
I know.
Yeah.
I feel for you, Tina. Men and women are both affected by issues like bullying and domestic violence.
I completely agree, Tyler. In our conversation, women mostly answered, I have, and it demonstrates a common thread with women.
That's where La Casa comes in. They want to create a safe space for individuals who feel like they're alone.
Domestic violence is a growing issue affecting people of all backgrounds, economic classes, ages, and relationships. In San Francisco alone, the police department responds to about 4,200 domestic violence reports annually. Unfortunately, it's really difficult to know just how many are affected by domestic abuse because about 40% of victims do not report it.
Yeah, so the other chunk of my work is educating the community about the prevalence of domestic violence, how to support people that might be experiencing domestic violence, and how to reach out for help if they or someone they know is experiencing domestic violence. It affects far more people than we often realize. So 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men will experience some form of domestic violence over the course of their lifetime. In California, 40% of women will experience some form of domestic violence. That might include economic abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse. 3 out of 4 people know someone who has experienced domestic violence. Unfortunately, it's all around us, but oftentimes it can take place outside of the public eye, so we're not quite as aware of it. And what La Casa does through our community education and outreach is to really bring domestic violence to the forefront of the conversation, help people understand how prevalent it is so they can support people or they can support organizations like La Casa and get help.
When thinking of domestic violence in a home, it's usually perceived to be between a husband and wife. The reality is, domestic violence doesn't have an age or gender criteria. Young people in their teens also experience domestic violence.
So there's a few examples of why a teenager would call if they are experiencing domestic violence in the home, right? So their caregivers are exercising forms of abuse towards them and they're unsure what to do, especially if they're a youth and they don't know where to go or who to turn to. They can call us for support and we can offer support around that. We also focus on intimate partner violence, right? So if a youth is in a relationship where there is intimate partner violence, we try to offer support if that is happening as well. But a lot of times too, if they're just in unhealthy relationships with their friends, or if their friends are going through it. We get a lot of calls about youth whose friends are going through it and they just want to know how to be a good friend.
La Casa de las Madres focuses on empowerment and the ability to make choices. They offer services free of charge, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
When we come back, we'll talk to another representative from La Casa, Andrea Diaz, Education and Volunteer Manager.
And later, we are going to get a little loco.
Loco, as in crazy?
Yes, Tyler, but that is all I can say for now. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Under SF Inspire. On today's episode, we are highlighting La Casa de las Madres.
And now we get to hear from a survivor speaking on her experience with domestic violence.
As a child and well into my teenage years, I witnessed my father's emotional, verbal, and physical abuse of my mother. And my mother chose to stay. And although their relationship improved throughout the years to being abuse-free, I could never understand why or how my mother put up with my father's abuse. I vowed that I would never date anyone like my father. And then I met my ex-husband. Everyone loved him. He was really friendly and encouraging and loving. And it all kind of just started very subtly. Every time we got into an argument, he would throw and break whatever was within reach. And he would blame me for all of our arguments. Somehow, everything was always my fault, even if I was the one that I was upset at him for something. I didn't tell anyone what was going on. I didn't tell my family. I wasn't really speaking to them at the time. I didn't tell my friends, mostly because I was embarrassed because of how I was allowing him to treat me. But at the same time, I was protecting him. I did not want my family or friends to despise him. I began to lose a lot of weight and I was depressed and I decided to leave him. So I tried leaving. He promised he would change, and so I stayed. We went through moments where things would get better for a couple days, and then, things would escalate again, and we would get into really aggressive arguments. And one day, he sexually assaulted me. I was really furious about it, and I demanded an apology. He reminded me that we were married and refused to apologize. And not until I begged him in tears for an apology, he gave me a half-hearted one, no remorse. And I stayed. I believed things would change, and I loved him. You know, he was not beating me, so I could just leave, but at this point, he was not allowing me to physically leave. One day we got into an argument, and that day he decided to leave me alone. He didn't take my phone away. And in that moment, I just rushed, called my sister, at the time lived 2 hours away from me. I gathered as much of my belongings as I could in that time, and she came, picked me up, and I left. After that, you know, we got divorced. He continued to harass me for some time until I threatened to get a restraining order. So that's really when he stopped harassing me and looking for me. I went through this period of time where I think that my survival mode kind of kicked in, and I was just trying to maintain a new job. And eventually it hit me, started getting a lot of flashbacks, and just having a hard time, just feeling really depressed, feeling like I was still in the relationship even though I was not. Started going to therapy, and I got prescribed medication. I got diagnosed with major depression, and then I was giving antidepressants, and so all of that started helping, and I started feeling better. But I wanted to do more for other people that were in similar situation. So I found La Casa de las Madres, and I decided to volunteer for them. My name is Maribel Lopez, and I'm a survivor.
Right now, I have the pleasure of sitting down with Andrea Diaz, an education and volunteer manager for La Casa. First of all, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Let's start with, how did you first hear about La Casa de las Madres?
I've known about La Casa de las Madres for quite a while, but at the time I was living in San Jose and working with another nonprofit that also works with victims and survivors of domestic violence. And as I made my way back into the Northern Bay Area, I started looking at where I would want to move to, and La Casa was definitely up there with the organizations that I wanted to work with. So that was about 2 years ago.
When you first started, what was your position? Because right now you're the education and volunteers manager, right?
Correct. When I first started with La Casa, I started off as a case manager. From there, I went over and was the domestic violence response team advocate. So I was working with the special victims unit within the San Francisco Police Department, and then I moved into this position.
I think a great part about what you do now is educating the public, because I noticed that a lot of people, when we talk about domestic violence, it's hard to recognize too. Why do you think it's so hard for some people?
I think it's hard because we have such a narrow definition of it. Many people only recognize violence. A lot of the other parts, like emotional abuse, financial abuse, can sometimes be just considered as part of the norm. Whether that's due to societal standards or cultural norms, people might not be able to acknowledge those or see those as violence or abuse, because that just may be what they have always seen and haven't known any difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Maribel, when she was telling her story in the package, it was very inspiring. When you hear all these stories, I bet you hear a lot of people going through domestic abuse and also being a survivor from it. How do you separate your own emotions when you're working with all of these people?
I like to think that when I am speaking with somebody and when I am having them share their story with me, I'm really just holding space for them. So I really take myself out of the equation and I'm just holding space for them to share, for them to discover and learn and plan out how they want to move forward and seek safety in whatever measure they need.
I love that. A part of what you guys do as La Casa de las Madres, you mentioned that you guys just help the victim and support them in whatever ways they need to. You guys don't ever tell them exactly what they need to do. And I think that's such a wonderful language that you guys are using.
Definitely, it's important to remember that nobody knows their life, their relationship, and themselves better than the victims and survivors themselves. They know what they need better than anybody else will. And we also don't want to repeat the cycles that they're already experiencing by further telling them what to do and telling them that they don't know what they're doing.
For anybody that's dealing with this at home or whoever's watching this who might be going through domestic violence or maybe seeing it, what's your advice for them?
Definitely just knowing that it is not their fault, that they do not deserve abuse, and that they're not alone. Whether there are, a million other survivors and victims out there, and support groups that can help them, reach whatever it is their goals. For us, like you said, it's never about telling anybody what to do. It's not about leaving the relationship unless that's what they want to do, but there are many other ways that they can receive support.
That's really inspiring to hear. Aside from yourself and inspiring women who works with La Casa de las Madres, can you let us know a little more about the women that you get to work with every day?
So I have a great pleasure of all our staff is pretty much made up of women. So we fulfill every role within our organization. So from financial to marketing to reaching out, we really take care of everything.
That's really inspiring to hear. I'm glad that you get to work with women every day. That's part of what our show is about, so it's amazing. Thank you so much, Andrea Diaz, for coming in and having this important conversation with me.
Thank you, Tina.
When we come back from the break, we are going to have a special performance. Don't go away.
Hey, you.
Yeah, you. Getting that college education, what are you gonna do? Graduate and take some office job? Be like everybody else?
Or will you dare do something different?
Like, be a teacher. You could be my teacher. You got the skills.
The smarts?
Yes, you.
You could be the teacher I never forget.
That'd be cool.
Does that corporate job even have recess? What are you gonna make of yourself?
What are you gonna make of me?
Welcome back. We want to thank all of the staff at La Casa de las Madres.
Don't forget to find out more information to visit their website at lacasa.org.
From all of us here at Under SF Inspire, thank you for joining us. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Tina. Remember how I said we were going to get a little loco?
Yeah.
To help us end our show, here is Loco Bloco.